Okay, so you're probably wondering why I played you the little Sonic Hedgehog song, Mania. It's because it's the acronym that's going to help you remember the 5 causes of World War I. So, as we can see, the first M stands for militarism. We have A for alliances, N for nationalism, I for imperialism, and A is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So that's what we consider the spark or the short-term cause of World War I. So let's use this information to fill out our chart. So first we need to have the definition of militarism, and then we need to answer the question of how did this cause contribute to the start of World War I. Alright, so militarism is the belief that a country should have a stronger military capability and be prepared to use it. And you can see the amount of spending that was occurring on military at just 15 years later, 14 years here. Look at the difference in military spending, and it was kind of like one country would raise their military, and then another country would be like, uh-oh, I need a bigger military than you. And yeah, so they would go back and forth like that. So the M, so how did they use the military? The countries used their military to colonize and to compete with other industrialist nations. The more countries spent on military technology, the more threatening that they would become towards someone else. Alright, so next we have imperialism. So we remember what that is. We've been studying that for the last couple days, and it's basically when European countries are competing with each other to make claims in other colonies. They did this in Africa and Asia, and they were on the search for raw materials and markets to buy goods in far-flung corners of the world, led to increased tensions in Europe. So basically they wanted different markets to sell their goods in. And here's a picture that we discussed in our lecture on the imperialism in China, and how we have the British, they're basically splitting up China and taking control in the different areas. So you can see how this is going to cause some tensions in between different nations. So how did imperialism impact or cause the start of World War I? Several countries were competing to establish colonies in other areas. This caused competition between imperial nations, especially when there was nowhere left to colonize. Alright, so we have alliances, which also was a cause of World War I. Remember, an alliance is an agreement with another nation or country saying, hey, if you get attacked, I'm going to come help you, and if we get attacked, you're going to come help fight for us. So there were 2 large alliances, but basically 2 sides of World War I. So one was called the Triple Entente. Remember, Entente is a French word, and one of the countries that happens to be in the Triple Entente is France. So that kind of helps you to associate one side from the other. And the Triple Entente is sometimes called the Allied Powers, and it consisted of UK, which is Great Britain, France, and Russia. And sometimes Russia had some Slavic countries that were in the areas known as the Balkans, including Serbia. And then we also had the Triple Alliance, and the Triple Alliance is also called the Central Powers, and this included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. So how did alliances help cause or contribute to the start of World War I? We had basically people that were taking sides. So in order to keep themselves safe, countries signed treaties with other ones stating that they would protect each other if attacked. So the Triple Alliances, the Central Power, and a triple entente, the Allied powers, form increasing tensions in Europe. So when Austria-Hungary declares war on Russia, all other allies declare war as well because they all have each other's backs. Nationalism is the N in mania, and just remember, nationalism is your pride in your own country. So we talked a lot about nationalism in France during the French Revolution. We talked about nationalism in Haiti during the Haitian Revolution. We talked about a lot of nationalism and ideas that brought people together. We talked about the Italians who fought to create their own countries. There were several Italian-speaking nations, but they were all separate, so they fought to be all one. And some ethnic groups that wanted to unify, but were part of the few empires left in Europe, like the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, created tensions by declaring their desire to rule themselves. So how did nationalism help cause World War I? So remember, nationalism can either unify a country or empire, or it can divide it. So some large empires had ethnic groups who wanted to separate from the empire because they wasn't their original ethnicity. So they wanted to leave, and that was causing tensions in Europe. And some of the ethnic groups were still part of the large empires, and they wanted to separate. Alright, so we're going to talk about the second A in mania, the assassination, which sparked, it was one of the causes that sparked World War I. But we have this area right here called the Balkan Peninsula. And due to the Ottoman Empire not doing so well, the Russia and Austria-Hungary are competing for control of the Balkan Peninsula. So within the Balkan Peninsula, one of the largest ethnic groups there were the Serbians, and their cultures were very similar to Russians. They referred to themselves as Slavs or Slavic people. So when Austria and Hungary annexed the twin Balkan provinces, the Balkan nation turned into Serbia, who considered Bosnia a Serb homeland. So Serbia finally was able to double its territory due to the Balkan Wars, and this starts to threaten the Austro-Hungarians because they start to get larger. So the Russians and the French form an alliance, and Great Britain, whose legendary naval dominance was threatened by Germany's growing navy. So this triple entente, which squared off against the German-Austro-Hungarian alliance, meant that any political conflict had the potential to turn into general European war. So the Balkans was known as the Powder Keg. I don't know if you know anything about explosives, but it basically, this is like very explosive. A powder keg is a container for gunpowder which can erupt if there is a spark. So the spark was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And you can see this political cartoon here, which has the Balkan troubles in it, and basically if anything sparks it, it's going to explode. So when Austria-Hungary declares war on Russia, several other countries declared war, and this causes a lot of these alliances to go into effect, because they're all like, okay, well, now you're under war, I'm going to come help you. So Serbia, which remember was, their ethnic group was Slavic, they wanted to separate from the Ottoman Empire. So the Arch Franz Ferdinand, and he's from Austria-Hungary, he visited Sarajevo, which was the Slavic region that we talked about, Powder Keg of Europe. A nationalist group called the Black Hands organized an assassination and killed the Archduke. So that was the spark that cause World War I. So again, mania is militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, and assassination.